All right, guys. Let's go ahead and have a seat. Someone just informed me that in breaks is where Rotary gets all of its business done. So that explains a lot. So I'm really excited to introduce our next guest and her team. This is Gail Smith and Harley Feldbaum. They're some of the President's National Security Advisors. So I'm really excited for them to speak with you, and we'll get it started. Thanks, Gail.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. And a term of diplomatic art and high scientific value, you guys completely rock. You do great work. I've been in the development field for a long time. I'm the President's Special Assistant and the senior person who does development, democracy, global health, humanitarian response on the national security staff. I'm accompanied by Harley Feldbaum, who's otherwise known as my brain, who will help out here today. I apologize. I'm going to have to leave at about 11 and run across the street because there are humanitarian and other crises going on in the world. But I've had the privilege of seeing what you do around the world over many years. And one of the things I always envision is I can't tell you the number of times I've been on a road, not necessarily a main highway, and it's got all those signs of here and here and here and here, and there's your logo up there. It is on every one of those road signs on the African continent, so I salute you also on your branding. But I mean that seriously, because that branding is important. We support development around the world for a lot of reasons. We've got strategic interests in it because we are safer, more secure, and more prosperous when countries around the world are safer, more secure, and less vulnerable. We have all sorts of economic interests in it. If you look at the change in the world of countries that were once low income that are now middle income, we've got more partners. But it's also about our values and about a fundamental message that the government of the United States and the people of the United States care about the rest of the world enough to invest in their future and their prosperity and their dignity. And the fact that you are all over the place doing that is of extreme importance to all of us, and I think sends a message to people around the world about what the American people believe in. So we're very indebted for that. We have just a small thing in our portfolio called Global Health, where I'm proud to say that we're the world's leader on global health. And I'm even prouder to say that I think we are at the point now where this is not even bipartisan, but a nonpartisan commitment supported by the executive branch, the legislative branch, successive administrations, with each one building on the legacy left by the last. And that's a fabulous thing. That means that all over the world, people know that the fact that the HIV/AIDS epidemic is on the run, the fact that people in communities are seeing better social services emerge and seeing their governments do more, the fact that fewer kids are dying from malaria or bed nets are showing up in different places, or the fact that polio is on the run. I'm going to leave Harley with the punchline on that one because that's where you guys really rock. It is in large measure because of our leadership. It's not that we've been every dollar, it's that we are investing the most and making sure it's on the agenda across the board. And let me just briefly talk about two of the categories, and then we will open up for questions or from you or comments from you. The first is on HIV and AIDS, where we were fortunate to come into office having in place something called PEPFAR, which was established by President Bush, and where we took a decision to build on that platform. It was established as a relief program at the peak of the epidemic. We chose to continue to use it to put out the flames, but to also start to use it as a tool for development. That this epidemic, while we think we can bring it under control, it's a long-term proposition. It's all over the world. Countries and communities need to be able to deal with it on a sustained basis. So we have done quite a lot to expand our response, to help countries and communities build the capacity they need to manage it, to work with partners to ensure that they are investing more in this. And one of the great gains we've seen in the fight against global AIDS is a number of countries in the poorest parts of the world have stepped up in profoundly powerful ways, putting more resources, training more health workers, appointing really serious, capable public health leaders. A combination of things, including vision and aspiration and a determination on the part of the president, allowed us on World AIDS Day to see him make an announcement of major importance. This was one also echoed by Secretary Clinton in a speech she gave out at NIH, which was that it's now possible to think about an AIDS-free generation. That's actually in sight. And we were able to announce, and the president laid out a big and bigger push on our part on the prevention side, because what we have learned is treatment is critically important, but that if you really push across the spectrum on prevention, you shrink the number of infections you have in the first place. So he announced new targets on every aspect of prevention. There are 5 or 6 interventions that are key, including increasing our treatment targets. Our treatment targets are really significant. We said we would go up to 6 million people. That means that the United States is keeping 6 million people with HIV alive. That's a long-term commitment. The exciting thing is that we've learned in the last couple of years that treatment contributes to prevention because it reduces the spread of the infection by those who are under treatment but infected. So we've kind of got this force multiplier at the treatment end of the spectrum, and we think we will have great results to report. So that's kind of, global AIDS is in an extraordinary place. This summer we will have an extraordinary event. The International AIDS Conference will take place here in July. It will just be a small deal, 30,000 people coming into Washington, D.C. from all over the world. But it's going to be a big event for us. It's the first time it has been held in the United States in 22 years. Part of the reason for that is the lifting of the HIV entry ban early in this administration. We hope you will watch that. And one thing you should all be aware of that I think is going to be profound is that the AIDS quilt will be back on the mall this summer. So that's going to be important. Child survival is something the U.S. has worked on historically for a long time. And again, there's always been strong support from Congress and obviously groups like your own. Here as well, there are tremendous gains. Child mortality around the world has dropped 70% over the last 50 years. That's a big deal. We've learned a lot also about what interventions work, and my brain will handle the technical answers on this. But we've got an opportunity now which we hope to seize in June, and starting off with a kind of public social media campaign called Every Child Deserves a Fifth Birthday, where you are able on the USAID website to upload a picture of yourself at age 5 and join the campaign. But where we, working with UNICEF and others, will be holding, led by USAID, a call to action in June, which is to make a major push on ending preventable child deaths. There's a lot that we know. If we organize ourselves, if we kind of align our resources, if we focus on the key interventions that work, we think extraordinary things can be achieved over the next decade. We're going to make a big push on that. One of the exciting things, consistent with this point about governments all over the world stepping up, is there are 5 countries around the world that carry the biggest disease burden. And traditionally, we've been in a mode where you had donors and beneficiaries, where we more or less kind of compensated. We would give them a lot of assistance for all the right reasons to help address that burden. 2 of those countries, Ethiopia and India, will be co-conveners of the conference because they are saying, this is our problem, we want and appreciate your support, but we're going to put the political skin in the game. In fact, we are putting the political skin in the game to take this on as our responsibility. That's a huge development for global development, but it's also going to have a huge impact on the numbers. So that will be in June. On polio, I will just say, and I give full credit to Harley, who's far more expert in polio than I, who told me today that Nigeria is the only country in the world that reported polio cases this week, with only 6 new cases reported in the north. India has not had a case of wild polio virus, as opposed to tamed polio, since January 2011, and has interrupted the transmission of indigenous wild polio virus. That's one of the hardest places in the world to control this disease. And I say with all sincerity that that victory would not be on this piece of paper if it wasn't for the work that all of you do. So you should feel extremely proud that you are fighting and beating one of the most devastating diseases we've seen in history. So we thank you for that. And with that, I'm going to cease talking and ask if there are questions we can answer or comments you may have, and both Harley and I are happy to take them. And when you see me walk out in about 7 or 8 minutes, I apologize because it will look rude, but the intention is completely otherwise. But please, I think we had a question here.
Glenna Slong with the Washington, D.C. Rotary Club. We're just starting a new project with Rotary in Future Vision, and it's to put in breast cancer centers in countries for underserved women. We're starting with Turkey. We're going to Accra, Ghana. We will be in Nigeria, going to Kosovo. So just to let you know. And I'm also rude. I know you're going to run out of here, so I wrote I'm not proud.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's a lot of research on your global health when we were putting this all together.
Oh, great.
Yeah, you guys.
Well, I think the thing that will help a lot in that is a lot of the countries you mentioned there are countries that have really built up their capacity. Ghana's income level has shifted dramatically, and they've got a foundation to build on, and the potential to not only do greater detection, but then also to start to build platforms for actually responding to breast cancer and other non-infectious diseases. So that's great. That's great. And I think your card's like really totally classy. It's kind of, I like the ruffled edges here.
Could we have speakers who have questions come to the microphones for the live streaming? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Kay. I'm a former Rotary Peace Fellow, and I'm currently working on HIV in the Middle East and North Africa. Very excited about IAC. I think some great things are going to happen, and I'm hoping some very interesting policy will be presented. PEPFAR has, of course, been a great program focused on high prevalence countries, but I'm wondering what the approach will be, thinking about prevention, high risk, low prevalence, and some of the funding flows that have been taking place in terms of dropping off, what your new approach is in terms of looking at HIV. I know that treatment is important, but in some of the regions and areas that I work in, there's low prevalence and therefore low priority, which I don't think is the appropriate approach, especially for women living with HIV.
That's a good question. Let me just say something about funding. You refer to decreasing funding. There's a very slight decrease. Global health and HIV/AIDS in particular is by far the biggest contribution we make in foreign assistance. There's also, we made a decision to transfer some amount, which we will be doing, of our bilateral funding to the Global Fund for AIDS, TB, and malaria. Part of that is because one of the things we do really well as the United States is leverage. So that when we say we're putting X amount of money into this multilateral pot, our diplomats and other officials go around the world and say, well, hello, Foreign Minister so-and-so, how much are you putting into this multilateral pot? And we've got a really, really good and proven track record on leveraging anywhere from 3 to 5 to 1 when the United States says we're going to step up and do something. We're very good at getting others to do it. So that's money that will still go to HIV and AIDS, but we think will force multiply. The other thing is that because of extraordinary efficiencies in the cost of HIV treatment coming down, fixing some of our own systems, which are, I think, now more efficient and will continue to be more efficient than they have in the past, the unit costs of our programs have come down. So we're able to do more with the same dollars. Now, your question on countries where prevalence is not high is a good one. I think that the view of PEPFAR has been since the beginning not to exclude those, but to focus on those countries where the epidemic was of such dimensions that if it was not brought under control and brought to, this sounds horrible, but manageable levels, if you know what I mean, levels where you can treat those that are infected, you can get a handle on the prevention and prevent the kind of wildfire, that we would see a tremendous number of deaths and a net loss, particularly in the world's poorest countries, that would be hard to recover from for decades. PEPFAR is always looking at how the disease pattern works, and Harley may want to say more about this, in order to say, well, you know what, it's kind of, the numbers show that it's coming down over here, but we've got more over here than we thought, so that we should move that way. As well, the Global Fund is a mechanism that works all over the world. So we're not discounting the importance of HIV and AIDS in middle-income countries or countries where it is of lower prevalence. We're putting a higher premium on poorer countries where the prevalence is so high that it's a danger, not just in terms of the number of people affected, but the other impacts of the epidemic. But I think
I'd only add that I've seen PEPFAR doing terrific work on being data-driven and using the data to target the epidemic, and that's obviously, as Gail said, going to focus on the biggest burdens of disease, but it's also going to lead you to focus on the high-risk populations, even in countries that don't have large burdens, and that's going to maintain, among women, among other high-risk groups, that focus is going to stay there.
Good morning.
good morning.
My name is Ezra Teshome. I'm from Seattle, Washington. Tenacity. My question to you is, you eloquently gave us the good news about polio. And polio, somehow, the funding is going to dry. With all the funding cut that our government and others are having, is there any commitment from the U.S. government to continue to fund the funding for polio? Because even though we're that close, we need more money now than ever.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and we have a commitment to polio that we will maintain. We also, in this area, work with a lot of private organizations. Obviously, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has been a very big player in this space. UNICEF is doing a fair amount and intending to do more. So in addition to trying to protect our own contributions, we are always doing that leveraging thing. We're always doing also a division of labor, where we might say, look, here's what we're doing on HIV and AIDS. For example, there is a big push now on non-infectious or non-communicable diseases. We think that's critically important. We're pushing some other donors to say, you need to do more there, because we're covering this. But we very much got our eye on polio, because I think you're absolutely right that because of the progress, this would be a terrible moment for the international community to step back. And I'm going to gradually move this way.
Okay, I have a quick question about
Yes.
Cuba.
Cuba.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure
we
that'll
have
be
been
an
able
easy
to-
one, yes.
We're not, we're not asking for any money to be sent there, but I've been traveling there for several years on a humanitarian visit to just spend our own money and help humanitarians there, senior citizens. And it's constantly getting harder to get a humanitarian license through the Treasury Department. And so can you comment on that?
I can't comment on the specifics, but I can tell you that I would be happy to reach out to my colleagues who work the Western Hemisphere in those issues and follow up on this for you.
I'd appreciate that.
Sure,
Thank you.
I'm happy to do it. My brain will now take over while my body moves.
Gail is actually the brain, the heart, and the soul of our development and global health operation here, in case you, as I'm sure was apparent. So, and I would just add on the polio work, you know, in terms of resources, the resources of Rotary for 25 years and over 1 million people volunteering their time and personal resources for it has just been outstanding. So there was some applause before, but we really applaud you for your work on polio. So other questions, I'd be happy to help as best I can.
Hi, I'm Kristen Post. I'm from the DC community. When we talked about the projects for breast cancer, the response was, well, those countries are really well set up. They have now the infrastructure to support that. And I think that's one of the things that we see with NGOs, organizations that want to go help. They often try to get the least supported populations, but then there's no government there or infrastructure there to help the sustainability. And I think USAID has seen that as well. So I was just wondering if you could comment more about what you're doing and what you would recommend for international organizations with good hearts in that. I think there's been a lot of discussion about what to do with government, how to work with them. So if you can give us some examples of what to do.
That's a tall order. I think the question's a good one, though. It's how do you create sustainability in global health efforts by getting the governments themselves to take on those efforts? And I think there's a range of options depending on which disease, which issue you're working on. You know, if you're in the 1980s and you're thinking about HIV, the question of working with governments is a difficult one. It's a highly stigmatized disease, and you really need to build up in terms of reducing the social stigma, in terms of working with the populations affected, to get to the point where governments are going to take that on. And look at where we have come with this. We now have, you know, an AIDS ribbon hung on the White House every World AIDS Day. You know, we have presidents and families talking about it. And at that point, now we're thinking about how do we bring African governments, which have been, you know, especially South Africa, but also Botswana, Namibia, other governments really stepping up and taking on more shared responsibility for the HIV/AIDS epidemic, which is just marvelous. It'll make the programs better. It'll make them more financially sustainable. There are other issues, though, that are tougher that don't have the kind of attention in some countries. Some of the non-communicable diseases, maybe neglected tropical diseases. And in those cases, I think you need to, you know, go back a little bit further and while working on humanitarian relief in those populations, also seek to work on the policy realm to build up the support so efforts ultimately can be more sustainable and governments adopt them. So I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all solution, and I think you see that through everyone's work, through the Gates Foundation's work, through your work, through the work of USAID and other parts of the U.S. government, seeking to both address where the largest burdens of disease are, address where the most needy populations that we really can serve to elevate those problems are, and then working on country sustainability and country ownership at the same time. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Kevin Melton. I'm a former Peace Fellow as well. Just returned from Afghanistan, spent 28 months. I worked for USAID and for DOD. Speaking of sustainability, one of the things obviously we're looking at there is sustainability, of course, but also that goes back to the question of interagency. And I think when we talk about Afghanistan, we've seen literally the pot of spaghetti thrown at the problem. And I think that goes back into funding, resources, personnel, et cetera. And so I want to ask, what, from the NSC's point of view, are we doing interagency-wise to prepare ourselves better for, you know, looking at vulnerable populations and states where we can't just turn towards the government per se to resolve some of the issues that affect our national security?
That's a great question. First, thanks for your service. You know, there's a lot of ways to express public service, and so thank you for yours in Afghanistan. The Afghanistan question is way out of my lane, so I'm not going to go too in-depth there. We've obviously made huge strides in terms of maternal health, child health. We were starting from a tough place, and I think the sustainability of that's going to be, it's going to be hard. We'll have to see how it goes. But I think on the health side, we've actually done extremely well in terms of working with NGOs and the Afghan government.
That's very true.
Good. No, I think that was our sense here. I can only tell you, as someone who's been on the National Security Staff for just a couple of months, that in terms of the interagency coordination, and particularly on the documents I've seen on Afghanistan, just an extraordinary degree of seriousness in terms of presenting options that are well-researched with pros and cons, and enormous scope of interagency buy-in. It is just something that the U.S. government takes enormously seriously. And when I came in here as a relatively new person, I was really heartened to see the seriousness with which we proceed on this. I know that's the expectation of obviously the entire U.S. government. I came from academia. Before that, I had some pretty tough views on this stuff, and I was very, very pleased with that. In terms of engaging countries where the governments themselves aren't always helpful, we do that. We do a lot of, we do HIV/AIDS support in Zimbabwe, for instance, where we don't always agree with that government. And we do it through either NGOs or we do it through helpful branches of the Department of Health where we can think we have input and impact, and the funds are not distributed to other causes. And you see that with Burma now as well, or Myanmar, where we've maintained low-level presence for a long time, and now there's this terrific opening up and opportunity for impact. So we seek to engage and push, and where, as the President said, people will walk the walk of peace, we will certainly be behind them on that. Thank you. Any other questions? Good. Well, thank you so much for being here, and really congratulations on your ambassadorial work in polio and everywhere else. So thank you. Pleasure. Yeah.
While we're waiting on our next speaker, I want to remind folks that we have, this is all live streamed again today. So there's a lot of activity happening sort of out and around this meeting, including, so you can, folks, any of your friends, family can watch on whitehouse.gov/live. We're also going to be tweeting in the lunch hour with at John Carson 44, my boss. He'll be there, and we'll have some folks, Rotary members from across the country. We'll be tweeting with them and hopefully getting them engaged in the discussion that's happening here and now. So those are a couple of opportunities. We also encourage you while you're here. I know that this is actually sort of this room is actually a cone of silence. So you probably noticed that you can't get cell service in here, probably can't tweet and do all of that other stuff. So that's just part of it. But if you can, as you move around during lunch, we encourage you to tweet and tell sort of about how the morning went. If you're Facebookers, you can also hop on Facebook and let folks know that you're here and what maybe your favorite part of the day has been. But we really encourage you while you're here to just tell the story about things that maybe surprised you and what your experience was like. And we think that it's just really important that not only do you guys really take this knowledge and use it and apply it to the programs that you're running and volunteering in, but that you spread this among the rest of the Rotary membership. So we think that's a really important part of it. With that, I also want to remind folks we have another speaker coming up from Department of State. I believe she's en route now, and then we'll have one more speaker before we break for lunch, and I'll hop on right before the lunch and kind of explain the logistics of actually of getting up to lunch. So we'll do that. So if you guys will hang tight, we'll we'll get started here and back started here in the next couple of minutes. So thank you. All right, guys, I'm excited. I was really excited about Gail. I know that I keep saying this, but I'm generally excited about you guys being here and excited about our speakers. So we're really fired up. But I'm really pleased to introduce. We have with us today Deputy Assistant Secretary Robin Lerner, who is from Department of State, and we're excited to have her here. Robin. Yeah.
Good morning. So you're still awake, right? It's not after lunch, so we're good. This is much more formal than I would normally want to be my platform for talking with you all, but it is a real honor and pleasure to be here. I'm glad that I could come. Rotary is a huge partner of ours. I am the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Private Sector Exchange, which means nothing to anyone, so I will describe it. I come from the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs over at the Department of State, and so we are basically the Public Diplomacy Bureau, and one of our mainstays is exchanges. And while we have a couple of directorates that really deal with grants programs, academic, professional, and cultural, we are a scrappy little unit that works with the private sector or private industry sponsors to bring over 300,000 exchange participants to the United States every year. So when I say private sector, it's nonprofits like Rotary, and it's also for-profit sponsor organizations. It's also universities, it's local school districts, it's state and local government. It's all kinds of American institutions that partner with us to bring over these wonderful exchange visitors into 15 different categories of exchanges. So this J1 visa, a lot of people hear about the J1 visa, that's our cultural visa. You may not know that there are these 15 categories where we can have wonderful students and professionals come over as research scholars, professors, short-term scholars, teachers, medical residents, high school students, we have college and university students, goes on and on from there. Au pairs, there's a lot of different things, I'm probably not remembering all of them. And through these exchanges, we really build this, what is the mainstay of public diplomacy and the Fulbright-Hays Act, which sort of authorizes all of this activity, that it's real cultural exchange. And it's really fantastic to have such a wide, diverse body of American institutions and organizations that work with us on cultural exchange. So Rotary is a huge partner of ours, especially in the high school program. And it's not just an honor to be here because you work so much with us, it's because Rotary really embodies this idea of reciprocity and exchanges, bringing people here, and Americans going overseas. But also understanding at its core what is a cultural exchange. I came to this office, I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary, I've been here for 2 months now, so I feel like a real veteran. But I came from the Hill, where I was working for Senator Kerry as he was for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, where he is actually the chairman. And I worked there for 3 years, and I covered public diplomacy for him. And part of what I was doing when I was looking from the Hill perspective was how well are our exchange programs meeting the mission of cultural exchange? But where is there abuse? Because abuse happens in these visas, especially when you have, while we have partners, a wide, diverse array of partners, we don't know exactly what everybody's doing all the time. And unfortunately, some of our partners don't understand this centrality of the cultural component very well. Sometimes they see an opportunity to have interns come from company X in country X and bring them over here, and they're just a pass-through, and they really don't pay attention to what's going on. When I was on the Hill, I noticed that there was a little bit too much of that going on, and so I was asked to come over and really have the chance to look at our programs and see where there needs to be reform. And I mention that because high school is included in that, but it's that cultural side where we noticed some of the greatest weaknesses. And that doesn't seem to be happening with our Rotary exchanges. This idea of volunteerism that is so central to Rotary, the idea of the reciprocity, the idea that this is kind of a privilege for people to come over, and it's about sharing information and sharing cultures. So that's great, and that's what we kind of need to do more of in our exchange visitor program. And to do that, we have this plan in the next year, throughout the rest of this year, to actually look at programs like Rotary and the really successful exchange programs we have and highlight them and create a real vision around the kind of exchanges that we want to do and that we are doing. And I know all of you are here because you have some kind of involvement in public engagement with the White House or with government or with exchanges. Today's, from what I've been told, today's sort of seminar is about private citizens being able to engage with the government toward their goals, furthering your own goals and your missions. And we see ourselves as really being an office that does that, because for our grants programs, our grants exchanges, we have people in-house in the State Department who really run the exchanges, and they work with partners for the actual program implementation. So say it's a short-term leadership program for journalists, and we'll have the State Department will work with our embassies to select journalists, and we do all the program management of it, and then we work with partners to create their actual program on the ground. So there's a lot of interface with citizens. There's a huge opportunity for citizen diplomacy there. But it's at this end over here when you're implementing the program, whereas with us, our engagement with American institutions and organizations is really from the beginning. We have all of these sponsors, which I already explained are numerous and diverse, but they really work with partners in other countries to identify individuals to come over and be part of the program. And to me, that's just so exciting because they are they have partners on the ground. And right there's immediate connection between where the participants are going to be placed and where they're coming from. And that it's not just a transactional exchange. They have partners. Those are partners. The partners have broad reach into the communities in which they work to select individuals. They have a real basis of understanding what's going on in that community. So they bridge with our sponsors, who then take an exchange visitor and bring them into the community that they work closely in. And all that goes from there is huge. So we see ourselves as working with American citizen diplomats, you might say, from the start to the end. And one of my goals is to really try to capture that more in what we do centrally at the State Department. We do, as I mentioned, we have some 300,000 exchange visitors that come over in all these different categories. We want to capture those when they go back home. All these individuals have just spent a significant amount of time in the United States. And they are going to go back and talk to their friends and talk about their program, their experience here, but also put themselves out as some kind of an expert on the United States, which they should, because they've just spent from 3 months to sometimes 3 years in our country, meeting all of you, staying with families sometimes, working alongside Americans and researchers, teaching our students. And they're going to go back and they're going to take everything they learned when they were here and they're going to digest it, and it's going to come out somehow through them. And we hope that it comes out in a good way. But even if it doesn't, everybody that they know sees them as an expert on the United States. So we would like to actually capture them more through alumni groups and through more intentional outreach to them, because we have these embassies all over the world who do great programs. I think probably some of you work closely with our embassies. And we want to keep them in the fold when we have great programs, when we want to do focus groups. When we have to further, or we'd like to further explain what's going on in this great country, here's a huge body of people who are sort of live bait, as you would say. So for Rotary, you all have been doing this. We work closely with you, as I said, on the high school exchanges. What's great about Rotary is it's not just, if your high school program, you do a high school program. It's not just having students come over and go to high school and then they go home. You infuse intentionality into it with volunteerism, with social messages. You don't take a profit. You're not doing this for a profit. You're doing it for the exchange. And that is so important and so welcome. We really want to take more of the elements that we see in the Rotary exchanges and kind of build them out to our broader vision. And actually, that is one of the things I'm going to be doing in the next year, is looking at all of our different categories and looking at what are the elements that are so central to a successful cultural exchange and putting them out there for every single category. So there's more consistency across the board. So while Rotary's special, we like everybody else to be the same. So we see that across the board. So let's see, what else can I tell you? From my office, I don't know, a lot of you, if you work in a high school exchange, you would interact with James over here, James Alexander. He works with me on high school exchanges and does a lot of communication and outreach with our sponsors. And I think has already spoken 3 times this year to Rotary conferences and seminars. We're happy about that. We'd like to keep up the communication. That's what I think is sort of really an important thing that I hope to do while I'm here, while I'm lucky enough to be a DAS in this position, is maintain communication. I know that you all, when you're doing your stuff, you observe things. You observe maybe how our embassies are acting. You observe how other high school exchanges are going. You observe maybe just good ideas that you would like to communicate back to the State Department. And I'm here to tell you that we really welcome that. We really want to hear back from those of you who are out in the field, who have the opportunity to see things in action. Tell us how it's going. Tell us how we're doing. Give us your good ideas. And I mentioned James because he already has a very good conduit. You have a good conduit through James, but we welcome that and we want to continue that. Let's see, I guess I can say exactly which ones you spoke to. Who's at the Ohio Erie Youth Exchange District Meeting in Charlotte, and the South Central Rotary Youth Exchange Conference in Tulsa, and the North American Youth Exchange Network in Anchorage. So I don't know if any of you are from any of those places. Yes, raise your hand. Hi. Who here knows James? Good. I mean, I have talking points and I can continue talking, but I want to make sure that I'm touching on things that are of interest to all of you. So I don't know if we have the chance to do question and answer, but I'd be certainly happy to answer any questions or hear any comments, please.
If you'd like to know more about what we do, once a year, we have what's called Rotary UN Day at the United Nations in New York City.
Great.
And we have many of our so-called champions, just average Rotarians, presenting their global and community projects. So it's an all-day thing. If you'd like to go, you're invited.
Thank you. That sounds great.
Tell us what are the date?
November 3rd.
November the 3rd, okay.
Your outreach to our visitors is encouraging, but I hope that next week you remember that Rotary Exchange Program is truly an exchange program. We send probably 3/4 of all American students overseas. And there is a network which our State Department, I think, should be involved with and concerned with. Because on the ground, our perspective is that we are much, much more concerned of those we're hosting than those who are representing us. And from our experience, we have found out that for some reason, if we start doing something, the rest of the world starts doing it. So when we make any step to impede that exchange, it also impedes our ability to go there.
Thank you. Actually, reciprocity is a really important issue, and I'm glad that you raised it. It's really hard, isn't it, to get the same number of Americans going overseas as we get here. It's one of those things, and we'd really like to fix that. We worry that we don't focus enough on that? I think we have a lot of programs from government to try to get students. We've done a lot of bilats with different countries to encourage scholarships and encourage students to go overseas, learn Chinese, go to Korea. But it's not happening as much as we'd really like to see it happen. And I'd like to know more about why. I think a lot of people think about that. There's a cost and expense to it, but it's one of those things, and I'm sure you all through your clubs try to bring that message out of internationalism and how important it is to go out and see the world. We agree, and I also wanted to mention that's one of the special things about Rotary, that it's not just one way with you, it's really two-way, and that's incredibly important. And I agree, we should be really looking at that from the embassy side, how many students are going over to particular countries, and then seeing what they do, what great things they do when they come back here.
I'm Ferry Moini from La Jolla Golden Triangle in San Diego Rotary Club. I just wanted to make a comment how wonderful this program is and impact of this program on a few, particularly regarding women. I'm working for 10 years with in Afghanistan, and I tried many, many times to get approach to the women to somehow to put some association together or something to work towards the women, and it's amazing. Because of your program, there is 2 ladies, they came over here for 45 days, and it's such a great impact on them because they went back and they called me to come and help them to put an association together, and it's doing phenomenal job. So thank you for that, and I hope you continue this program because the impact of coming and seeing what's going on and then give them an idea and then going back and say, okay, the way they treat us over there is not right, particularly regarding women, and it's changing. So
thank you for that. That's wonderful to hear. That's really important. And when I worked for When I worked for Chairman Kerry, we worked very much on women's empowerment issues in Afghanistan. But obviously our Secretary of State and our President cares greatly about the empowerment of women and girls. And exchanges is such an opportunity for us to select some to come over. And even through a short term, like you say, a short-term program can have a huge impact. But I do have to laugh. I was posted to our embassy in Cairo, and we had a journalism program, and we were getting some editors-in-chief to go over and have a good 3-week program. And that's hard to do. It's hard to get people to leave their jobs, the professionals, senior professionals, to come over. But we got them to agree, and we sent them over, and they had this great program in 3 different cities in America, and they came back, and we said, how was it? And first, of course, they complained about the food. But then 2 things. you Americans, your potholes are huge. Your potholes are bigger than in Cairo. They're huge. You swallow our car. Don't you fix your potholes? And then it was, but we couldn't believe it. People were stopping at red lights at midnight. Everybody stopped at the red light. There was nobody else. They're stopping at the red light. But come on, stopping at red lights. Because we have a rule of law culture. Yeah, the light's red. I'm going to wait. It's those little things that we never think that we think, oh, they're going to take away this idea of, triple sourcing their information and protecting their sources and, things like that. No, it was the potholes are huge and they stopped at the red lights. Which is why exchanges are so important. And with high school too, I mean, wow, to get youngsters that are 15, 16 years old with everything that goes about being a teenager, right? It's complicated enough being a teenager, but they're so impressionable. And everything is vivid, right? Remember when things were so vivid to you because it was new? It's hard to remember that, but there was a time. And we have these students, they're coming over and they're living with American families. And it's so complicated. A family is a complicated sort of unit. And you bring in somebody else with language issues and different culture and different expectations, and their family does it a different way, and so many opportunities for misunderstanding. And somehow, through the course of 9 months, they come to love each other. It's like they've bonded through the difficulties, and they never lose that bond with each other. And that's why these high school exchanges are so important. And then after, then what they do from that moment on will forever be different. And so when you take a professional and bring them over, that's great. That's hopefully helping what they do as a profession. But when you take the young people, it changes the course of their lives. We do have issues with the high school program. It's really hard to get hosts, as probably you all know. And we, at the stage program at ECA, we have thought about that, and we have different ideas of how we can also help encourage host families. It's one of those things, and I don't know, it's sort of a chicken and an egg thing, but that's one of the vexing parts to the high school exchange program that hopefully one day we'll try to figure out how to make that part a little bit better so we can have more. But it's not even necessarily we need to have more. We just need to do really well with the programs we have. And because a lot of you do high school, I have ideas of actually interacting with your high school exchange students while they're here in the United States. I think most of them have no idea that that the State Department has anything to do with them coming because they've never interacted with us. But we actually sanction these programs, and we do consider them under our umbrella of exchanges. And so we've talked with some sponsors, and I would love to follow up, and James can as well, on ideas about how we could actually implement that through, I've thought about essay contests, and then, I don't know if we could pay for it, maybe people can pay for it, I don't know. So let's put the pay thing aside, but a trip to Washington, D.C., doing web chats with them or webinars. It's just stuff we can do to kind of let them know that you're even more special because the State Department knows you're here and we're really glad. And then that opportunity when they go back to have some interaction with embassies, we think that's a nice perk to it all. Thank you.
Todd Dayton from down Rotary Club in the Miami area. And we're one of the few Rotary districts that are international in the United States. And one of the issues we have with our exchange students, we have 11 of them inbound just out of our district. And when they go over to the Bahamas, which is part of my district, Lucaya area, Freeport, getting them in and out, of course, with the United States, it's certainly something that would be nice for us to figure out a way to make that happen because it's an important part of their exchange when they're here in the United States. The other thing that we're also a beta test right now with one of our clubs, Rotary Club of Coral Gables, that's doing a beta test on the corporate affiliate, allowing, because we've traditionally been members rather than corporations are a member of Rotary. And it may be something that can be latched into the exchanges going on of becoming hooked up corporately with Rotary. So when they do go back, there may be a corporate exchange that goes on and a direct connection between our two countries with corporations doing work abroad in the United States. So more comment than a question, but the one with the Bahamas, it's a big issue of trying to move that many students in the state of Florida across borders. And I understand the Bahamas have to be part of that as well, but the U.S. government makes it a little difficult because they're here, not in the Bahamas. So thank you.
Thank you. No, we'll write that down and we'll look into that. Yes.
Hi, Cheryl. I'm Mary McCambridge. I'm from District 5440, which is Colorado and Wyoming and a couple pieces of other states. We have been working very much recently with the Youth Exchange. We have 24 inbound, 23 outbound, and there has been some concern. Actually, we're also a host family for a Norwegian student right now. And I would love to have brought her this weekend, but prom is this weekend, major drama.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
One of the concerns, I'm happy to hear your comments, because one of the things we've been concerned about is after that horrible exchange program got aired, not Rotary, but some of the others, we've been concerned about Department of State requirements going, the paperwork, the cost, and everything going up, up, up. And so our people are concerned about whether the program is in jeopardy. So I'm just wondering if you can address that. And our people went to Alaska and probably saw James there, so they loved the conference, but we're concerned about continuity of the program.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And you know, I without knowing the specifics of the costs and things that you're concerned about, I can say that we have looked closely at the high school exchange program, and clearly the rule from 2010 established new requirements, and we will probably have more new requirements. The health, safety, welfare of the exchange participants is really paramount, and I know that you all know that, and you do everything you can. But we have got to have consistency across the board, because not everyone's doing the same thing. And with that number of students that come and having, you know, outside entities, as I was saying before, we can't control what they're doing. We try very hard. We have to regulate them. And I did a call not long ago with high school sponsors where I talked about our vision for the program. And of course, one of the big things that comes up is fingerprinting versus criminal background checks. Things like that I know are really of concern to high school sponsors, because you don't want to criminalize the host families with fingerprinting, and we're not even sure, we don't have the authority at the moment to do so, and we are not even sure that that would bring us the right thing. But we do know that some sponsors have they have compliance units that pour over criminal background checks that go way above and beyond, and others that don't. And so one of my points in my phone call was, I can't regulate every vulnerability out of this program. We need sponsors to, through their industry kind of umbrellas, to make commitments themselves. And I encourage you all, through Rotary, you know, headquarters, so I don't want to say pressure, but kind of really heavily engage with other sponsors. I know that can be really hard, and there's reticence, and everybody does things differently, and everybody has a different model. But there are some things that industry needs to do itself. And we will eventually get to rooting out the bad actors, and we're working on that every day. Every day we're working on that. And we would rather be left with a smaller pool of really good and strong ones. But that takes some time, and I don't mean, you know, that's a bureaucratic thing to say, but it really does take time, because we have to really build evidence and really understand, and there's a lot of back and forth, and you don't want to get it wrong. And I think it's really hard too when, I mean, it's just, you know, poor James is, you know, he feels the pressure on this stuff, because our secretary has said 0 tolerance for abuse. And things happened in the past, and we want to deal with the present and the future. And to do that, we have to really get the information that we have in really good shape. But somebody said, a neighbor reports something about something that happened in a home. Well, that's really tough. They weren't in the home, but they saw something, what's going on, da-da-da. We don't want to get things wrong. We don't want to misaccuse people. But that's a long way of saying that for some of this, because of all that is unclear in situations, and that the disparity between how different sponsors actually conduct themselves, we have to do some across the board. And I know that we get a lot of complaints about the second home visit. I don't know if that's what you're talking about. But also, I think for the grants programs, I definitely cannot speak to that, but there is greater and greater oversight from Congress over how grants are done, and monitoring and evaluation. So you may be seeing some of that through there. Anyway, I don't know how our time is.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Unless there aren't any other questions.
So just to close, to say, it's great. I'm really happy to see faces of people who are really working on exchanges and already get it. You get that internationalism and you understand the volunteerism and you get the cultural component. So thank you for your great work, and we hope to see you anytime you're in DC. Give James a call. You know, we can leave a couple of cards for folks if people want.
I always get lots of calls.
All right, guys. So we're kind of coming to the end of the morning session, but I'm excited to introduce my boss and our director of Office of Public Engagement. He's really sort of the reason, sort of the idea. This was his brainchild to really think about what groups we could bring in and fill you in on what we're doing. So he's especially excited to be here. This is Mr. John Carson.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. How's the day been so far? Great. Excellent. Very glad to hear that. And we have some fantastic folks who will be with you this afternoon. And as Victoria said, we've had other groups here at the White House for our community leaders briefings, but I have been particularly excited to have the Rotary Club here because there's few groups that have filled South Court Auditorium who I have had so many personal opportunities to see the incredible work that you do. First of all, Rotary Club gave me a scholarship when I was in high school to go to college. And as the first, so thank you, as the first person in my family to go to college, that meant a lot to me. Second, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Honduras. And I worked with a lot of different organizations that were trying to make a difference on the ground in Honduras. I worked primarily on water systems. And the most rewarding experience that I had in my entire 2 years there was an opportunity to work with the Rotary Club of Franklin, Tennessee, and the Rotary Club of Choluteca, Honduras, and to see them come together and to see the work that they did in a small little village by the name of La Libertad, just outside of Triunfo in Honduras. And for me, it was such a lesson in seeing other models of development, but getting the chance to see what difference that connection made. The fact that we had people from the United States, but working hand in hand with Rotary leaders in Honduras. And as I'm sure many of you have experienced, you know, the community leaders from Franklin, Tennessee, didn't have a lot in common with the community leaders in Choluteca, but they had Rotary. And I watched that instant bond come together and watched just an incredible cultural exchange and watched an opportunity to make the lives of a small village in Honduras better. So I want to thank you for the work you do all around the world, making people's lives better and making those connections happen. And I've taken that lesson with me in the work that I do now. And so many of us here at the White House and in the administration have been a part of service projects like these. And the lesson for me is in everything government is doing, we need to find partners like Rotary to be those boots on the ground, to be those facilitators, to be those connections. And the final experience that I had, a fellow Peace Corps classmate of mine who came in at the same time, was the recipients of one of your scholarships to study in Argentina. And I got to see the difference that that made in her life, that incredible opportunity. She's actually with us here today, Laura Graham. So you've had a chance to talk to the president's top policy people. His chief of staff was here earlier. Gail Smith is the president's top person on development. Later, USAID Director Raj Shah will be coming by. But the conversation I wanted to have was about engagement. I want to hear your stories and advice on how the federal government can do a better job of connecting the resources that you saw here today with the resources that you're doing, how we can learn from what you're doing. Rotary is such an incredible network, and I hope that this is just the start of an even further partnership in getting good things done and making connections all across the world. I'd also be happy to take a run at any policy questions that you had that didn't get answered. If I don't know the answer, we can find the person who does. But if you've ever just had that question, I wonder what they're thinking there at the White House, or why did they do this, or what was the approach to that? I will be happy to engage on any of those subjects. So let's open it up. Who wants to start out? Jump, yes, in the back.
As we heard that by 2013, our military is basically departing from Afghanistan. My question is, what's the commitment of our government to the government of Afghanistan regarding education and also health and the other issues, which is not connected to our military?
The commitment to Afghanistan in the last decade has, most people I think focus on the military presence, but in fact Afghanistan has been the #1 largest recipient of support from our other programs, from the State Department, from USAID, and that commitment will remain. But I will ask for the Rotary Club's help on many of you have seen and been partners with the work that USAID, that the State Department, that others do, and have been supporters in the struggle to make sure that funding for those programs remains. Some of the strongest voices we've had in those debates about what is the appropriate funding for international aid have come actually from ex-military leaders who have seen that by avoiding conflict, we can both save lives and money in the long term. But the Rotary voices across the country have been some of the strongest in that debate. So in a time of tight budgets, I would ask for all of your help in that piece of this as well.
Thank you.
My name is Ginger Taylor McDonald, California District 5170. And we've talked about education and the lack of funding and the change that's occurring and certainly the problems we have in the education system. But I'm going to use the word appalled. When we start to do the stats on literacy, it is just amazing of the population of children that cannot read today. In fact, one of our district governors is here from San Diego area who did a specific grant. Rotary provides funding for public image grants so that we can focus on specific projects and build awareness about these concerns. And in San Diego alone, which is a rather affluent area, 25% of the fourth graders cannot read, a population of 3.1 million people, and of that, 1/4 of the parents cannot read. What kind of programs is the government doing to really look at this? Because if we're looking at a large percentage like that, that is moving through the system, obviously a good percentage of these children will never get into the college programs. So what does our future look like if we're not really addressing and helping this change? I know Rotary's working very hard to improve this, how to read programs, improve literacy, all types of efforts, but I think we need a bigger arm. I think we need the government to really focus on this, because if we don't do something today, tomorrow it will be too late. Thank you.
Well, Ginger, I'm really glad you brought up education and asked that question. When we get to this debate of what is the proper role of government, what should we be focused on, the President's mind, education is at the top of the list. And I want to make clear that one thing he has stressed throughout his time as president, it isn't just about what government does. He has called upon parents to take responsibility and be actively involved in their children's lives and education. We are coming at this from a couple different angles. One angle is that all of you have seen that there are partnerships, public-private partnerships, nonprofit organizations like Rotary that are making a tremendous difference on the ground. And so we're trying to foster and share those ideas. I think you would all probably not be surprised by how difficult it can be sometimes to take a good idea that might be happening in San Diego and make sure they've heard about it in Philadelphia. So your help in spreading those ideas. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, resources matter. On the federal side, as we went into the Great Recession in 2009 and 2010, the Recovery Act filled a huge gap in a lot of local school districts' funding. That ended in 2011, and we've seen just some very, very difficult decisions that school districts are having to make. I had a group of parents in my office last week from Philadelphia. They have to send their kids to school with toilet paper because the school district can't afford it. So the president is going to continue to make this argument that one of the fundamental roles for government is making sure education support is there. We are driving reform with it. I'd encourage you to take a look at the Race to the Top program. Instead of just formula giving spread out equally to all schools, the president created a program that adds on top of that competitive grants, which in the first few years were given out by state. But starting this year, those will be available by school district. $550 million of Race to the Top grants, and I would really encourage Rotary to take a look at your local school district, make sure that they're applying for these grants, because nonprofits like Rotary can be a partner in applying for those Race to the Top grants. So thank you for your great work in San Diego. Yes.
Thank you. I believe that we all know that we're here today. Lee Bowles from Tennessee, District 6760. We're here today because Rotary is a volunteer army, and if you give us a task, we can make great things happen. What I personally would like to see from the administration, what the government's role is in my mind, is give us a project wish list, give us a task list. By example, our club in Lewisburg worked on the same Honduras water project that you spoke of.
Yes.
It's a great project. The volunteers that went down there came back to our club and talked and said, there's such a problem with housing. For, I believe it was $5,000, we can build a home. And it's so easy for us to raise that little bit amount of money, and we tacked that project on to the infrastructure project that was going on, and we built a home. And we plan to do that every year. That's such a small project that I think all the clubs around the globe would say, that's a little thing that we can do. And I'd like from the government to say, these are the issues: literacy, global health, all of them. Here's a little issue. It'll cost you $2,000, $10,000, whatever the price tag is, and say, this is how you do it. Lay out a study plan for us of what your wish list is, because I know we can help you accomplish it.
Well, thank you, Lee, and I hope you have a pen with you, because I have a list for you. Well, I'm going to leave a stack of my cards, too, so you can all grab them. But there's an interesting thing going on in the world right now. Theoretically, everything the government does, everything Rotary does, everything nonprofits do, theoretically, you could find it all in one search on Google. But despite that, nobody seems to know what's going on. And I'm sure you've all experienced this. I think we live in a world where we're surrounded by information, but because there's so much, we only trust what comes to us from a trusted source. And Rotary is that trusted source in your community. So I would challenge you, wherever your club is, to find out how the federal government can be a partner in the issues you're working on, because this president has made clear to his entire administration, we can't do it alone. We need to form these partnerships. So Raj Shah, who's here this afternoon, has made this a huge focus. You are all aware, I'm sure, as important as that federal investment in international aid is, the private sector and nonprofits does far more. And so he wants to find ways to be partners. Also this afternoon, you're going to hear from Jonathan Greenblatt, who runs our White House Office of Social Innovation, where we're trying to find those specific stories and lift them up. One really interesting idea that he has pioneered is usually what government does is gives you a grant, and then the organization goes out and does the job. They've sort of turned that on its head with a model that they are testing, where it's, instead of just giving someone the money, it's a grant for success. So a local group has to actually put the capital up front, but if they achieve a measurable goal, whether it be on literacy or development, the government then pays for success. It's modeled after something that was done in the UK, really turns on its head the incentives that you normally see. So shoot me an email. My email address is on my card here. I'll leave a stack of them. And whatever your issue is, we'd love to help you find that federal agency that could be a partner. Let's go to, thank you.
Hey, John, we met before.
Yeah.
I met you at Doris at our Rotary Club.
Yeah.
This is what and I tried to email you a couple of times, as a matter of fact. But then, anyway, this is what I wanted to discuss with you. We ran a community center in Southeast Washington, and we did a survey of children from age 12 to 21 about the impact of violence on the youth. And it was a random survey. It was 29 children involved. And to give you the statistics, the major ones, every one of these children had been impacted by a violent act of some point, most of them too. But the really alarming statistic was that 10 of these children had actually witnessed a murder. But yet, when it came time for intervention, for programs to come in, as a therapist, psychologist, a mental health professional, even a member of the clergy, there was no intervention except what we did. This is going on all over America, John. Gun violence is killing young people. In Chicago, you know, in St. Patrick's Day, 49 people shot in one weekend, 7 people murdered, and one 6-year-old child. Yet, we don't come up with a comprehensive plan. And what I'm gonna suggest is that the comprehensive plan, we need to get away from the rhetoric of Second Amendment issues and talk about what's really causing the gun violence. Because the minute we start talking about these issues, then the zealots start arguing about Second Amendment issues, and we get away from what we really should be doing. And I really would like to meet you and talk with you about that.
Excellent. Let's talk right after, and thank you for your work here in Washington. And it reminds me of another program that I'd like to make sure you all take a look at. How many of here this afternoon are going to be our champions of change that we're honoring? All right. This afternoon, as we honor our White House champions of change, I'd ask you all to take a look at some of the past champions that we've honored, because just a couple weeks ago, we had a dozen leaders here in preventing youth violence. So what we are trying to do, and Jonathan Greenblatt, who's here this afternoon, his office is leading this, is lift up those best examples so groups like Rotary can help spread those good ideas and make those connections.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, John. My name's Stephen Beer. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Innsbrook in Richmond, Virginia. And I'd like to comment that a lot of the service projects and humanitarian efforts of Rotary are facilitated by local leaders in the communities we serve who are political leaders like mayors, chief of police, et cetera. And I was in an exchange in Germany this past year, and the Rotarians were proud that their Chancellor, Angela Merkel, was a Rotarian, and some other leaders in their Bundestag were Rotarians. And I would like to make this recommendation that more of our leaders in Washington would become Rotarians so that we could do more
that idea.
to serve the world.
You should know that my friend Laura's been trying to recruit me, so I think I'm going to have to take her up on it now.
Wait a minute, there's something called the four-way test, folks.
That's right.
I'm Terry Allen. I'm one of the water boys from District 6360 in Michigan. We have worked with USAID on one of the collaboration grants down in the Dominican Republic, and I wanted to commend those folks for that project. I also wanted to bring up and point out a very successful military project, Operation Hand Clasp with the U.S. Navy, which has been very successful in helping to get clean water out into the third world, and also provides civic action opportunities for the troops. And suggest that you might, if there aren't already programs like that in the other branches of the service, I'm from the Army myself, I'd like to see that sort of thing there. So, thank you.
Well, and Terry, could I ask you a question? Have you been successful in working with making connections between USAID, the military, and other Rotary clubs? How have you been able to?
Oh, yes, yeah. So, we work with other districts in Michigan. We work with districts down in the district in the Dominican Republic. We've taken groups of folks down there to see the project and make them aware of it. Over 250 presentations at this point to Rotary clubs and church groups and others. So we're making a lot of connections.
That's fantastic. And it goes to a point that I continue to see. I am sure that Operation Hand Clasp has a wonderful website. I'm going to take a look at it. Maybe I'll even tweet it out. But even in this day and age of online media, which I think is so important, it is the person-by-person introductions. It's taking people down to see the project. That, at the end of the day, hasn't changed about how you get people involved. So thank you, Terry, for your work in Michigan. Yes.
Good morning. Bonnie Sorower from 7490 in northern New Jersey. We used to have in our area an armory food bank, food pantry for the families of military who are in military service, as well as those who are veterans or who have returned, and it was closed. We took it over, but we're finding that this is happening in other areas of the world and of the country where the military families are coming back, and or the families are there and the spouses are overseas and they don't have access. Is there some way we can work together better throughout the country to provide services to these veterans and reach out to the military families?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, can I ask how many other Rotarians here have worked on food bank issues in your local area? So it's fairly popular, and it is devastating to hear that some of the population most in need of this support, frankly, homelessness issues, are our returning vets. So their First Lady has taken this on, along with Let's Move, as her top two issues, and has started a program called Joining Forces. It is closely coordinated with the Department of Veteran Affairs, it's closely coordinated with the Department of Defense, but also with veteran service organizations across the country. So I'll tweet this out as well, but take a look at joiningforces.gov. We have a number of leaders from the military actually here in the First Lady's team who are helping make these connections. And the project you're talking about is exactly the kind of thing that they're trying to foster. So thank you for your great work in New Jersey as well.
Yeah, Jerry Evans, District 7610, just south of here, just a couple miles. The Office of Public Engagement seems to me to be an ideal location to put a person, let's say a Rotary contact person, so we could call one place in this wonderful city of ours and tell them, hey, look, this is an idea that we think might work. Can you give us somebody in the organization here, which is much larger than ours, a contact person that you have gone through and found somebody, hey, maybe this person can help you. Is that an idea?
It's a great idea, Jerry. And I think you've already got a big fan here in Victoria McCullough, who's been emceeing today. And I think what works best, because this, I'll be honest with you, this is a challenge that we face. We have a country of 310 million, and I've got a team of 20 people. I have one person in charge of youth outreach. Now, we work with the agencies. Each agency has its outreach team. USAID, Dr. Raj Shah, who's here this afternoon, he has an outreach team, and they focus on international issues, development issues, obviously. The Department of Defense has its outreach team, but those are all on issue areas, but Rotary covers so many. So I think what we can do is, first of all, I'll leave my cards. Victoria has given you her contact information, but we have a great working relationship with your national and international staff as well. And I think through that conduit can keep this communication going and connect you to people like Robin, who is here from the State Department, or Dr. Shah's team on individual ideas. How does that sound?
That sounds fine. Well, I was actually very interested to see what Dr. Lou had to say, because he touched on something that I work with, but just touched on it. And I came up afterwards and I asked him, I said, well, this is fine, do you do this? And he said, well yeah, we do that. Well, who do I contact? Because I have no idea, and I didn't even know his department existed.
Exactly. And again, he probably has a lovely website, but until you make the personal connection, and that's what I think Rotary can help us do. I hope you all are leaving today with, I'm hoping and guessing that you all have like 3 or 4 things that you know that person back at your local district who will be excited to find out they can be a part of. So, thank you, Jerry.
Hi, I'm Kristen Post. I'm the president of Laura's Club. So if you've been waiting for a personal invitation from the president, please join us at the Happy Hour Club. What I'm impressed with is through the day's speakers is everybody seems so open to what can we do, what can the federal government do to help you, which actually is surprising to say as an American citizen. I'm really happy to see that. But I wonder if this is the administration culture. hopefully everybody will have 4 more years, but what we've seen, say, in Afghanistan is that, it takes a long time to get things to take hold and to be part of the culture. And so I just wonder if this weren't the case, if the administration were to change, are we going to see these great people who are so willing to reach out to us now go away, and the culture of reaching out go away? And what are you doing to change things in DC to make sure that clubs can continue to reach out to you?
Well, Kristen, I don't get involved in the political side, but I would say that this is a pervasive part of the Obama administration culture. I think part of it was the president himself and the style of management that he has. You've probably heard us say we don't believe that Washington has a monopoly on the best ideas, but we really take that seriously. And the team that he brought in, as you saw, you've seen many of them today, came from so many diverse walks of life. But I think also it's 2 other things. First, we came in here, frankly, as the country was going through an incredibly difficult time. And so just any assumption you had about how things worked and how they were supposed to work were kind of thrown out the window. And I think the country's been going through that too. I think people value their communities more. They value service more. What we have seen is that Americans at a time like this, they become perhaps a little less materialistic, as what they've realized is what matters is family, is community, is service. We have seen, and just a couple concrete examples of that, AmeriCorps. Right now we have slots for 85,000 positions in AmeriCorps. Do you know we are at 580,000 applicants every single year? Think of that. Over 500,000 Americans apply to be a part of AmeriCorps every single year. We have seen parts of the federal government that have that on-the-ground connection and can partner with nonprofits, partner with community-based organizations, can't keep up with the requests for people to be a part of what they have going on. And so have tried to find ways, like at USDA and EPA, to give sort of people toolkits in a box so they can go out and be a part of it. So I think the short answer is yes. I think you'll see that continue because it's not just a part of this administration. I think it's a really good part of some of the lessons that we as Americans have learned going through this recession.
I told her I just got the last question here.
Okay.
Okay?
Because we don't want anyone to miss your lunch.
All right. I like what we've done today, and this is public engagement, but really it starts from the top. And if you look at the government, and we've got a great government that works very hard and everything like that, we ask a lot of you and the people working here. But we don't give them the time to be engaged with the public. What people have asked you to do, become a member and stuff like that. If, from the top down, they really believed in public engagement, and they became Rotarians, Lions, Chamber of Commerce, they became involved in the community, then a lot of the things that we're talking about would be there with you. So public engagement, I think we need to look at that and see how do we get the government more engaged with the public.
Well, thank you, and I think it's a good question, a good point to end on. And so I will, first of all, I'll spread the gospel here in the White House and see how many members I can get signed up. But excellent. But I'll also end with a challenge for all of you. I think when people think of the federal government, they naturally think of Washington, D.C. Did you know 85% of federal workers don't live within 100 miles of Washington, D.C.? Agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Commerce, USDA, they have staff on the ground all across the country. And they have leaders who are helping find solutions locally. Lots of what the federal government does is run through local nonprofits. It's run through organizations like a Catholic Charities or a Lutheran Social Services. So you don't necessarily see the footprint of the federal government in your community, but they're there. And so I challenge each and every one of you to find that local regional administrator for the Small Business Administration. Find that local leader from the EPA. And working with your national team, if you'd like to help make those connections, invite them to one of your lunches. I did come to the, which lunch was that we went to, Victoria? It was at the University Club here. We'll help make those connections as well. So I'm looking forward to the Twitter chat that we're going to do in a little bit. I noticed a bunch of your local districts have Twitter accounts. If you're wondering what that is, I'd encourage you to take a look at Twitter. We find it just an incredible way to help get those ideas, get those connections out there. And let me just end on once again thanking you for the incredible work that I've had the honor to see firsthand around the world that Rotary does. Thank you.
All right, guys, hang tight for a second. So we've a few logistics for lunch. I want to go ahead, before we do that, I want to mention, so all the champions, we're going to need you back here by 12:30. We're going to do, just to run through the program, do a quick sort of dress rehearsal. So please all of the champions be back here in South Court at 12:30. So that means, guys, we'll treat these guys like champions and let them be first in line at lunch. So we actually have some staff outside here. We're gonna exit through here. We'll have staff on hand to direct you up to the 4th floor, where you'll pick up your box lunches, and we have some rooms reserved so you guys can hang out and chat and catch up with each other. The last thing I want to mention, so the program starts promptly at 1 o'clock. That means the live stream will start at 1. So I definitely don't want folks to tune in and then to an empty auditorium. So so please be back here by no later than 12:45. Again, we'll have folks upstairs to kind of round folks up, but it does mean for a quick lunch, but I promise we've got a great program for the afternoon, so it'll be worth it. So go ahead and exit out of here. We got folks on hand, and we'll get you upstairs.